Julia Parsons. I heard you say your age, so you're not shy about saying your age.
Yeah.
How old are you, Julia?
98.
You're 98 years old. The oldest veteran in the room, I think, is Glenn Fletcher, who's turning 100 in December. Glenn.
Wow.
So you don't have him beat.
Oh.
I know some of you have heard Julia's stories before because it is quite remarkable. I'll just give them a little introduction. Julia was a graduate of Carnegie Tech, which is the forerunner of CMU for the young people here. In other words, she's smart. And the Navy knew that. And when she joined the Navy, they sent her to Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts to learn what, Julia? What did they teach you at Smith College?
Not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot.
No, it was just general Navy, what ships look like and that sort of thing.
Oh, I thought you learned like cryptography there, or cryptology.
We had some courses.
You had some courses in that.
But it was an officer's training
Okay.
program.
Okay.
For 3 months, and the last month we had some decoding classes, cryptology.
And they sent you down then after Smith down to Washington, D.C.
Yes.
To the Naval Communication Annex, and I think I have a picture of it right here. It was a former girls' school, maybe.
Yes, it was a girls' school.
And it was a special top secret location in Washington where they were doing what?
Where they were decoding everything, and it couldn't have been secret because they had huge antennas all over the place. I'm sure everybody knew it, and when we had our office picture taken, we had to walk a half mile down the road to a church to get our picture taken because they didn't want us photographed in front of this school, which was right there on Nebraska Avenue, wide open. It would no, I don't know why they pretended it was such a secret. It was obviously cryptanalysis going on, and they did everything there, Japanese, Russian, and I got into the German
And you
branch
got
of it.
into the German division, the U-boat division.
Yes.
For the North Atlantic.
Yes.
So you were, for those younger people here, that machine on the left is called ENIGMA. It was a top secret, this was truly top secret, it was an unbreakable German military code that they used to transmit messages around the world during World War II. Extremely difficult to crack, if not impossible, to decode. But here in your Shark division, it was called, the U-boat division at the Naval Communication Annexes, you had mathematicians and brainy people from around the country working on this.
Absolutely. They were
you
incredibly
able
smart.
to crack it, decode it?
We sometimes, not always we couldn't do it, but the secret of it was that you had to have the machine yourself, and that's why it was not used earlier on in the war, because the Allies did not have the ENIGMA machine. And one day the British were lucky enough to sink a submarine that didn't sink as fast as its skipper thought it would, and so the British sailors ran on board and got a copy of all the code books and the ENIGMA machine itself, and got it onto the British ship. And from then on, it was not easy because the code changed constantly, twice a day for the setting of the wheels, and once a day for the wheel order itself. So even though you had the book, it was only good for, the code book was only good for 3 months, and then it would start all over again. And we used every clue we could use to try to figure what they were saying, and as I say, sometimes we got it, sometimes we didn't. But in the end, eventually we did. They got very careless. We did a spreadsheet of all the messages. We hadn't broken the code for 2 weeks. And the convoys were out there wondering where the submarines were and what were left of them, because we had picked them off one by one. But we did finally, get this spreadsheet made, and there was one message from Germany at, I think it was 7:30 at night, giving the weather in the Bay of Biscay. And they got careless with it and sent it at the same time every night. It was the same length message, and they didn't even change the wording. So from then on, that was the end of the secrecy with the code. They thought the sub-skippers thought we were breaking the code, but Control kept saying it was impossible. They could not break the ENIGMA. And so that brought on the end of the war, because we had to wait till evening most times to break the code, but eventually we got it, and that was it.
And those Royal British sailors who jumped aboard that sinking German submarine, the U-boat, and captured the code books and threw them up out of the hatch. 3 sailors did that. 2 of them died on that ship. 2 of them sank with the sub.
Yeah.
1 survived, and nobody was allowed to know that they were even dead. Nobody was allowed to know that they were awarded, because then the Germans would know we had the code books. So their heroism was really not known for a very long time. You've said that you kind of felt like you got to know the German sailors on these U-boats, because most of the messages being passed were personal messages. They weren't military.
Well, not most of them, but
or many
some of them. They had personal messages, as when anyone had a death in the family or a baby or happy birthday, Control would send them a message. And we could tell that they were not important messages, because when the submarines had to surface to recharge their batteries, excuse me, they would wire back to Control and say, we did not get messages for 3 days, and Control then would send out a repeat of those messages. And that was our best clue, of course. We could go back 3 days and see what the message was, and they would repeat it for the subs that had been underwater and not received them. And that was, of course, our best clue, but that didn't always happen. So
we had a conversation about your service several years ago, and something you said really surprised me. A couple things you said really surprised me. One was that you felt sad when the German submarines were sunk.
Not to the submarines. We were sorry that the whole crew went down. We felt that we almost felt we knew these people, because they were there for so long, and we had read their messages over and over, and suddenly one of them would be sunk, and we'd think, oh, it was like losing a friend, even though that was our job.
Even though they were the enemy, right?
Yeah.
Right, but they were young people, kind of just like you imagine.
They're doing their job just like we're doing our job, but it's still, and we lived in Europe after the war several years, and I always felt guilty in Germany. I always felt that I had something to do with the deaths of their relatives, whatever. But at that point, nobody talked about it, so it didn't. It never came into the conversation.
And you never talked about your work
No.
on ENIGMA for decades after the war. Not
That's
even your
right.
husband, right? Who was
That's right.
a
Nobody.
Navy vet.
Not even my roommate, who was in the Japanese section. We were told to not talk about it, and we didn't talk about it. And it wasn't until in the 90s that I was visiting a friend in Washington, and she said that the NSA has opened a new museum. Do you want to go look at it? So we went over to, it was on the grounds of, well, it's still there, obviously, of, what's the camp there? Fort Beale? Meade. Fort Meade, yeah. Anyway, we went in there, and here was a whole room, a whole building full of ENIGMA machines and dozens of other machines also, hundreds of machines. And we didn't even know it had been declassified. And we were that shocked that we found it was like 30 years before it had been declassified, and we could have been talking about it, but we didn't know. So, but if you ever get down there, go. And incidentally, Carnegie Mellon now has several ENIGMA machines. One, the kind we used with the 4 wheels. It's in the Hunt Library on the in the fine books section. Huh. I think it's on the third.
Can you check it out?
3rd floor. No. But they have all kinds of machines that somebody donated. Some professor had collected, excuse me, Enigma machines from all over the world. And he had died, and his wife, I guess, was moving to an apartment or something, but she donated them all to the Hunt Library, and they're just amazing to see them all.
Julia, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
right.
but something else you told me surprised me. You said that at one point you knew where most, if not all, the German U-boats were in the North Atlantic. You had them marked on a map, and we often sent convoys right into them anyhow.
Well,
Convoys
if we
of
didn't
ships.
know, if we hadn't broken the code, we didn't know where the wolf packs were. And we could see a convoy heading toward them, and we would say the last sighting was in that sector, don't go there, zigzag again, as somebody was saying. They zigzagged
too.
a lot to
Right.
avoid them. And but in the meantime, of course, the wolf pack could have moved right into the path of the convoy, even if they zigzagged. We
Right.
didn't know until we broke the code
Right.
for the day of where they were. So
One other thing, I find this so interesting, I think some people in the room will. You didn't work on this thing, but this thing was really important in decoding Enigma. It was called a computer. And it really was one of the first to be built. It was called the bomb, or the bomba. And Navy waves generally were the ones who worked on them. I bet you saw one of these, but you weren't a technician working on one of these.
No. These were in the basement of this girls' school. They had banks and banks of computers. This was Alan Turing's bit. If any of you have seen his movie, it just was fabulous, and it really followed the truth right down the line. He was an amazing man, just amazing.
And
I
Turing
noticed
did come to Washington, D.C. and reviewed these machines. And
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to see them, and we drew up what we called a menu and sent it to the computers. It's very complicated. Anyway, the girls would plug in the numbers from this menu we sent. We changed the letters to numbers, and they were plugged in, and the computer then sent out all possible wheel orders for the Enigma machine that day. And then another office next to ours would then check them all out, and hopefully one of them would be the right one.
Exactly.
But that was it.
That's exactly
But
what these machines
there were
did.
hundreds of computers there, and they were the first ones.
They
And
were
as
the
you
very
can
first
see, they
ones.
were huge.
And they were hot.
Yes.
They were hot.
They were
I've
hot,
read
and they
that.
were very loud. I often wonder if those girls ever developed ear trouble, because they were locked in that room. Locked in, absolutely. They were brought meals, and
Locked
that was
in.
it for their for their shift. They were there for 8 hours,
Ooh,
and the door was locked, and they
could
could
not get
go
out. And that thing was really designed to do one thing, and that was to run through all the possible wheel orders, and then you would look at the results and see if any words actually came out. If any of the wheel orders made sense. And people would I find this interesting. That machine there was the most powerful computer in the world. Your iPhone is 4 billion times as powerful as that machine. 4 billion times. By the end of the war, there were 180 of these machines in operation, and the sum total of their computing power used during the war equals the power it takes to play a YouTube video for 10 seconds. The sum total. So the 10 seconds of this live stream, is the sum total of the computing power of these machines during World War II. Just amazing. You're a real
Yeah,
pioneer, Julia. Thank you so much for
thank you.
coming and sharing your story. Anything else to say?
I would like to say that it never occurred to me the benefits I would receive from joining the service. Not only did I meet my husband there, and we were married in the chapel of the girls' school, the annex, but I also now receive the VA hospital benefits. That never occurred to me when I joined. That was certainly a plus. And I never thought about the Veterans Breakfast Club.
That's
either.
right. That's the best part of it all.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you so much,
Thank
Julia.
you.
Thank you. Hi, Ted. Let's start with the beginning. Is that you on the screen there?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, this might be rough. You think so? I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that's a picture of you.
The last time I looked, I think that was me.
Were you drafted into the Army?
Yes.
I sometimes stupidly ask this question. I know it's a dumb question. How did you feel when you got your draft notice? I mean,
I was really happy because all the guys in the neighborhood went before I did, but
got it.
there was nobody left back home. So everybody was looking forward to serving because they felt that they owed this country something.
What was basic training like for you?
Pardon me?
Was basic training hard? Was it hard to leave home?
No, I was was down in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I had field artillery training, and I was shipped overseas without a furlough.
Without a furlough.
Without a furlough.
You could not come back and say goodbye.
No.
Oh.
After they put us on a train and brought us down to Newport News, Virginia, and we boarded a ship. And seven days later, we went over on the USS America, which was a big ship.
Let's talk about the USS America here. I have a picture of it here.
Yeah.
The SS America was a luxury passenger liner.
Right.
That was converted to a troop transport ship. This was a real top-level luxury passenger liner. 1,000 passengers could ride in comfort. Mm-hmm. When GIs packed into it, 9,000 of you, almost 10,000 of you.
I mean, we were wall to wall. To wall. We used to get in line for breakfast in the morning, about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we had to circle the ship all the way before we got to the galley. And by the time breakfast was over, we only had 2 meals a day. And
by the time you get your breakfast, it's time to get in line.
It was time to get back in line again for supper.
Lunch. Wow,
Right.
Did you get seasick?
Not going over. We went over without a convoy.
Because it was a fast passenger liner. Those
Right.
fast ships could go over alone, without a convoy, without protection. And this was fast.
7 days.
7 days, where it took
7
Al
days.
30 days.
Yeah.
So it took you 7 days. This ship, by the way, carried more troops overseas than any other ship in World War II. Any other one. And here it is coming home finally July 11th, 1945. It's a wonderful picture because if you look closely, you could see just all the GIs up on deck, just looking at the Statue of Liberty, looking forward to coming home. Did I ask you, did you get seasick?
Coming back, we did, because we came back in December.
Okay. Rough waters.
Yeah, the waves were so high that it was like we were in a valley at all the time because the waves were higher than the ship, and we were being tossed. We come within 2 degrees of capsizing.
Ooh.
That's how bad the storms were.
Oh, that's horrible.
We were supposed to be home in 10 days, and it took us 15.
Whoa.
To get back. We were all hoping to be home for Christmas because it was December 20th when we were on our way. But we wound up, there was a ship in distress, so we veered off to see if we could help. But we did go into Newport News, Virginia, and got ready to get our discharge papers.
What was it like to come home to your family after that?
Well, it was great because I never had a furlough. I never got home after I was inducted. It was a real happy day.
I can't imagine how happy that must have been. Here's a picture of you on the left in Caserta, Italy, in 1944. It says Corporal Ted Flora. So you were promoted to corporal.
Yeah.
I ask this question every once in a while. Did you ever have a stripe taken away?
No.
Okay.
No, I had a good conduct medal.
Okay. And then there you are more recently. And then here's a great picture. And on the back, that's you, again, young Ted, taken 1943, North Africa. I was 20 years old. I was assigned to the prisoner of war camp as an Italian interpreter. I'm standing in front of my Army 6x6 truck, that old deuce-and-a-half truck that one World War II veteran told me that deuce-and-a-half won the war.
Yep.
That these 6x6 trucks were so sturdy, so stable, so powerful, so versatile. You were an interpreter at a POW camp?
Yeah. Yeah, I was in a replacement depot when I had gone, when I went overseas, and they came down through the camp and they interviewed all soldiers who were.
Oh, I think we ran out of a battery here. We'll use this one. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, these things are eating batteries lately. You guys talk a lot, I guess. So anyhow, I'm sorry. You were at the POW camp.
And they came to down to the replacement depot, and they interviewed all soldiers who were of Italian descent, because the Italians were given up in great numbers, and they couldn't handle them. They couldn't speak to them. They couldn't do anything. So they'd bring them to prisoner of war camp, and they ran wild till we got under control. Enough soldiers that could speak Italian that could cope and separate the fascists, from the good guys from the bad guys.
And you were part of that process of separating the good guys, the good Italians from the bad Italians.
Yes, we interviewed all the soldiers who were black shirts, and
Right.
so that we finished. We went from one place to the next, interviewing all these prisoners of war. But I could never understand. They send all the fascists to America to work on the farms, but they kept all the other soldiers, and they made work battalions out of them.
Right.
And they even wore the American uniforms, but they had a white boot on the sleeve, so you could see that they were Italians and they weren't Americans. But that took up the slack, so that we were moved up to the front lines. But I wound up being with the Third Army and General Patton. And when I got discharged, it was from the Third Army. I had a couple of battle stars. And thank God I got home in one piece. My high school sweetheart was waiting for me when I got back. We got married. But
Ted, can I ask you this? It sounds like you had a nice job as an interpreter, and then the job was finished and they sent you to the front lines with infantry?
Yeah.
You were an infantryman.
no, I was in the field artillery.
Okay, you were artillery because you were trained in artillery. Can I ask you, do you remember the first time you were shot at, the first time you were in danger and what it felt like?
That was in North Africa, and the Germans were still coming over every night and try to bomb us. And we automatically, every night, we got by the foxhole and waited for the Germans to come over and start dropping the bombs. We were in danger every night, because they didn't care where they dropped the bombs. They couldn't get close to the docks to bomb the ships. So they wound up. They just unloaded their bombs and took off.
Thank you very much, Ted. Thank you for coming today, and Chris, thank you for bringing him.